This may sound weird, but I've had some weird things happen to me in my life. I've touched on this before. I've seen a lot of weird things. I think a lot of weird things. But if you actually listen, a lot of it actually makes sense when I get to it. But first, aliens. I know people are like, oh, there's no such thing as aliens. Some people do. I'm a firm believer in aliens. I've seen some things in my day where it's unexplainable. We'll say when I was 18 years old, so 20 plus years ago now, I was fishing down in New Florence at the bottoms, in the arches. Me and this girl at the time, we were fishing. It was at night. It was probably 10, 11 o'clock at night, so it was dark. We're down there fishing, talking. And out of the woods, there was this green like orb. It came out of the woods and then came down the river. You could see a couple hundred yards down at the arches, like upstream. It came from upstream, so you could actually see it. And you could just see this like glowing green orb come towards us, like down the center of the river the whole time. This was back before drones and, people had different things in the area. So definitely wasn't a drone, but this green orb just came down the river. And then almost when it got like parallel to us, then it went like back in the woods. It was unexplainable. It was just like a green glowing orb. There's no details to it. It wasn't a lightning bug because you could see it coming from, upriver, like really far away, and it just kept getting bigger. You could tell it was not beach ball sized, but it was a little bit bigger than, say, a basketball. So, at least from my recollection, it was like what we just call it a basketball size, and then it just went away. There was no like detail in it, and it definitely wasn't a lightning bug or anything at the time that we had in the area, and there's no reason for it to come out of the woods and then go back into the woods. Now you might say it's some kind of secret thing, because live near a power plant, but from where it entered and exited, it's not like somebody was there like special forces at the time had some high-tech thing 20 some years ago that was controlling it. This was just a weird object, and I found out later a lot of people that seen like aliens and types stuff, they see these orbs. So then I had no doubt in my mind it was some kind of UFO type object or aliens. And this was actually back, before good cell phones. I still had one of those like track phones where you had to hit the button like 3 times, just to get the right number or a letter to send a text. So there's no way for me to actually get a picture at the time. Of course, that was also back when people didn't carry cell phones at their hip pocket 24/7. So mine was always in my vehicle because, again, to even send a text, you had to hit the button like 3 or 4 times to get the right letter. And then a couple years after that, I was going to basketball and rec league out at Ligonier at the YMCA. And out in Fairfield, by Antioch Village, I saw this like light come down. It went from, it was like a cone shape as it came out in this like cornfield, and I saw it like lift up like a cow or something, but then it like dropped it as I stopped the vehicle, and then it just like flashed and took off. Another one of those unexplainable things at the time. I can't explain. I don't know what it was. Calling it a UFO and / aliens, because there's no explanation why anything at that time would have been there doing like even just shining a light down in that field and then just like zapping away. It was there and it was gone in an instant. I told people when they thought I was crazy, but hey, I saw it. I wasn't tired at the time. It's not like I do drugs, so I wasn't on anything. So that was another weird thing that just makes me believe in aliens and actual UFOs from, other planets or dimensions, whatever you want to call it. um, Another weird thing is I believe in like premonitions. I've seen and felt things before they've happened. I'm like, all right, something's about to happen. We'll just, like, we'll say, for instance, a ladder's going to fall. Like, I have this feeling a ladder's going to fall, and then, like, 30 seconds later, it happens. Um, I know that's happened once or twice, like, little things like that. But um, that was, like, a prime example of things. Um, I always get this, like, gut feeling, you know, I was always like the designated driver in my youth because I didn't drink or do drugs. A lot of times it's like, hey, like even if I was talking to people, like I was like, all right, like we'll say like a fight's gonna break out or somebody's gonna get sick or something's gonna happen. Like I always had this feeling. I was like, all right, we gotta go. Um, Little things like that. And then I've seen things in my dreams happen, and then they happen in real life. I know my mother, she used to have dreams of people being in car wrecks, and then like within a week, somebody would be in a wreck that she would know. Um, she would tell a couple people. She would actually tell my godmother. My godmother, I remember my mom telling me that she said not to tell her anymore because she didn't want to worry about who was going to get in an accident. And that happened to her a bunch of times. Um, Through her like adulthood, that she actually, saw people or had this dream. I can't remember if it was she saw specific people or she had a dream if somebody was going to be in a car wreck, and then within a week, people would be within a car wreck. I know she had some like life, like near death experiences, so that might have triggered something. But I've also seen things in my dreams, and then I've seen it happen in real life. I've actually met people at races, um, and I've seen them before in my dreams, and their names. Like we introduce each other, and they're like, "Hey, this is," I forget what who it was. It's been a couple years since that happened, but we'll just say like John Smith. They're like, "Hey, I'm John Smith. I saw it in my dream," and then like a couple months later, I saw them in person, and they introduced, and I'm like, "Well, shit, this is weird." And I was like, "Have I ever seen you before, or seen you at races? Have you done any races?" Like, no, I'm from like out of the area, so it makes it really weird. And I've seen things like that a few times in my life. Uh, like you get that deja vu feeling. And I've actually had conversations word for word, and then after I finished the conversation, it's like, wow, I remember that from my dream, like a couple years ago. It's just weird that things that I've seen in my dreams have happened in real life, and you might be like, well, if you have enough dreams, there's always that possibility that it's going to happen, or in the back of your brain, you sort of make that scenario happen. It's just hard to explain. Specifically, like we'll say like a deer. I can't tell you how many times I've almost hit deer in my life. I'd be driving at night or even at daytime. Something just is like, stop your vehicle, slow down. Not that I was speeding or anything, but we'll just say I'm doing 55 in a 55 zone or whatever, 50 zone. Something's just like, all right, stop, slow down, something's about to happen. And then we'll say like a deer runs out in front of me, or like a fox, or something like that. And then there's times where like people at night when I'm driving, something's like, all right, slow down, you got to be cautious right now. And then like I'll see somebody walking along the road and say dark clothing, where I might not have seen them. I'm not saying I would hit them, but within that, with wearing dark clothing, I wouldn't have seen them as until that last second with that dark clothing. So little things like that, like little premonitions, I've had happen to me a bunch. Those are just like small examples. I don't want to get into too many big ones. Because some people will be like, well, if you just visualize, we'll just say like winning a race. Like I can visualize myself winning a race. Well, it's not the same thing as having a premonition of actually winning a race or a specific race. You can visualize yourself winning a race, but actually having that dream and then that specific scenario play out, we'll say like the specific time or the actions right afterwards, is a little bit different. So that brings me to like fate. So like fate and premonitions and deja vu to me always go hand in hand, because I believe in fate, where like say if you're supposed to be with somebody, and if it's meant to be, it's going to happen. Or if you're meant to be in an accident or be rich, or small examples like and broad examples like those, if it's actually meant to be, it's going to happen. And then like with the deja vu, it's just kind of weird, because I guess if you're in a spot long enough or you visit a certain area, you're going to see like the same things over and over, which is going to look similar, and you're going to get that. I've seen that before, but I've seen things that shouldn't have happened happen. Like say again for my dream, we'll just say like a black cat, like, cause I think they use that in the Matrix, like a black cat crosses across the room, and Neo's like, oh, that's like I think it was Neo's is like, oh, that's deja vu. But like I've seen things like that happen, and I'm like, I've seen that exact scene or scenario play out before, giving me that deja vu / premonition scenario. It's just kind of weird. I know might make me sound crazy, and people are like, well, you need locked up. But if you actually think about some of the things that you've seen in your dreams and have happened in real life, or the feelings that you get like in your gut or your mind or your heart, you sort of know what I'm talking about. One of the other weird things is I believe in different dimensions. People always talk about every possible scenarios playing out all at one time, if you believe in like the timelines and the dimension things. And I do believe in different dimensions. And that could be sort of like an alien thing, like where aliens, are actually people crossing over from different dimensions or breaking the timeline, whatever that may be to you. I'll agree with whatever you believe, because we don't know for sure, but the whole dimension things, that everything's happening at the same time, all the different scenarios. So like right now, I'm a Caucasian, maybe in the next timeline, my skin's red, blue, purple, whatever it may be. All the different scenarios, maybe I'm short, maybe I'm taller, fatter, whatever. Nose is longer. All those different scenarios of how I look or how I act or what I say, languages I speak, whatever the case may be, is all playing out all at one time. Sometimes that field maybe get disrupted a little bit, and that's why we have, say, dreams and such that we do. Which brings me to the death in other dimensions. I feel a little bit that, if you ever had one of those dreams where you die in your dreams, or you get hurt in your dreams, I feel it's one of those connection things that we feel in our dreams. So if I'm dreaming and I die in another dimension, I feel like that's me and that other dimension actually dying. It really sounds weird and screwed up, I know, but I think that's why we see those, because of the electrical energy that our body gives off that nobody can explain yet, or where that energy goes. If you actually look into it, not just say, oh, you're crazy. If you actually look into, they can't figure out where our energy goes and comes from as a person. And I think that energy, once it gets released from a death, triggers something. And if we're dreaming, we actually like pick up like the electrical signal or what that person sees in that dimension, which makes sense. Is when you wake up, if you have one of those death dreams that you're like startled and shocked, and you're like your heart's beating really fast. You got that like say adrenaline feeling because that person's death is you in that other dimension, and it's sort of like his energy. Well, I'm going to say his because me being male affects you a little bit, and that's why you see it. So you sort of see like the last moments of that person's life from another dimension. If you think about it, it sort of makes sense why we have so many dreams where we die or get hurt and just weird things that happen, because we at times get glimpses into those other dimensions through our dreams. So I believe dreams are a form of interdimensional pathways, if that makes sense. I know a lot of people who do drugs talk about this or have near-death experiences, how they, see flashes or light or like different things happen. And I think that's what our dreams do a little bit. They open our minds into those different, what's the word? Like celestial paths or whatever it is that our mind can go to that we haven't even explored or even come close to even beginning to understand yet. The different levels that our mind can go, because we only use like 10% of our mind. But it's just weird because, if you really think about it out there, the possibilities are endless, what we're going to find. I know in our lifetimes we'll never really understand the meaning of life, or, how vast the universe and solar systems and all those things really are. But if you think about it, like if you believe in a higher power or anything, you always got to question, because I believe in a higher power, but it's like, all right, so if God's it for us, but what created God, and then what created that God? And like, you just keep stacking it. What created that? What created that? How did this happen? So like a Big Bang. All right, so how did that Big Bang happen? What created the Big Bang? Because it just can't you can't just be like, bam, there's life, or, there's the first atom or something like that. What created that, Big Bang? Something's always infinitely created something else by creating something else. So, just like a painting, I create a painting, but something created me. So what created that? On top of that, what created that? So if you ever see like Marvel movies, there's for instance, you got your gods and then like celestials and eternals and all that weird stuff. So there's always a stack on top of stack of created this, who created that, who created that. So I believe those possibilities are really out there as well. I know, again, people think I'm probably nuts and crazy, but if you actually sit down and think about it, because like I believe in the God and Jesus in the traditional sense, but I always question, well, who created them? Okay, and then who created that person, and who created that, and then who created that? So there's always going to be something else that created that, and then created that, and then eventually we're gonna could be millions of years before we figure that out. Which brings me back to everything that I've said so far about dimensions, people dying in our dreams, deja vu, fate, premonitions, and aliens. If you actually think about things like that, it sort of brings it full circle, and it makes you question things in life a lot more if you look at things from a broader perspective instead of just what they want you to believe in science right now. Remember how many hundreds of years ago people thought the world was flat? Now we know it's not. We thought that different things in our like solar systems, and like heaven was in the clouds, hell was underneath us. I mean, still maybe on those like a sort of like some sort of mental plane, but we know that's not like an actual physical place. But then again, where does our souls and our electrical energy go when we die? It just it's always been one of those things that disappears, that people can't explain. And then when people have those near death experiences, they see things or feel things and have such a broader sense of reality than most people will ever experience. And they understand a lot more when they have those experiences than we do. So you sort of have to lean that there's something out there we just can't explain yet. It just, to me, I question a lot more than most people. Most people let things go. But again, with the dreaming, I just think our dreams open, like we'll say, I guess a better word would be portal to like other dimensions or other mental planes, that we see things that are happening at the same time, or what will happen if you allow yourself to do that. And again, with aliens, one of the things that I always find funny is about like Bigfoot and some of these like weird creatures. And I've joked around about this before about Bigfoot. Why couldn't Bigfoot be like an alien that just, people see it and he just like disappears in thin air, like a visitor? I mean, it's possible. I'm not saying I believe that, but it's one of those things that you just can't explain, how many people seen a Bigfoot and it's just like gone and never to be seen again. I don't necessarily believe in a Bigfoot, but as I'm just using that as an example. But too many times, like with ghosts and different energies that people go where people have died, and just energies being found in those areas where people died, is just too common and unexplainable. And so you sort of have to think that those energies get trapped, or they like get trapped from like interdimensions, or like moving on from death and whatnot. Because I had a buddy in high school where there'd be some music playing in his attic. We didn't believe it. A bunch of us, we stayed over a couple nights, and each night we stayed over, you could hear the music playing, but they had no thing to play music in their attic. We even looked in the attic and there was nothing there. So it's one of those things. It's like, all right, so where did the music come from? Because they weren't playing it. It was just something they lived with. And like other things like that, just unexplainable. I guess is what I'm getting at in the end, is there's a lot of things in life we specifically cannot explain yet. And in our lifetimes, we will never be able to explain. There might be some answers to the beginning stages of understanding, but the governments and things like that are going to keep that hidden from us, just because they don't want us to freak out or discover that they don't have as much power as they truly do. That's probably part of it. But once you start questioning different things, your mind will start opening up, and then you'll have a better understanding of what actual possibilities and realities are out there. Because you really can't deny we're the only beings, and we're the only planet with life that still exists. Somewhere out there, there's got to be more life, and there's got to be more people, like a humanoid. There's got to be other planets with animals and water and stuff like that we just haven't discovered yet, that grow life. So when you think about that, you start to understand that there's going to be other possibilities of things happening at the same time. And then again, there's going to be infinite possibilities as the universe expands. So there's always going to be something different that could happen at the same time. because I do believe time is sort of, I don't know how to put it, like a straight line, as they showed in the movies. Unless you disrupt it, you're not going to have that branch. It's like time. All possibilities happen at the same time, and time happens all at once, type deal. So like, what's going to happen 50 years ago has already happened. It just hasn't been, unraveled yet in a reel or whatever you want to call it. But just little things like that, maybe people think I'm more weird now, crazy, want to lock me up, put me in cuffs, give me medicines. But I know a lot of people actually think like that. They're just not willing to say it. I just thought I'd share it a little bit. Because I like talking. I like listening to people talk about this stuff. And the more people talk about it, becomes more interesting. Like on Joe Rogan, he had some people talk about different things like that you just can't really explain it. It just gets kind of interesting. With, I think it was like the element like 115 or something like that. Just even theoretical ideas, when you actually start to question stuff, just opens your mind up to so many possibilities, so many worlds, scenarios. It actually, to me, it makes you more enlightened because you want to learn not necessarily more about that, but just in life in general, and to pick up knowledge as you grow smarter. Not everything in life's about growing physically. It's to me, the greatest things in life are growing mentally and emotionally more so than physically, because those are the two harder ones to do than physical, because you're always going to have those physical limits be reached at some point, where mentally and emotionally you're always going to be able to improve even as you age. You're not really going to have limits. The only limits you're going to have is, I guess, the understanding that we currently have, knowledge-wise. But whatever. Not that you guys all think I'm crazy. I just wanted to talk about that so I could cross it off my list. Let me know what you think. I'm always willing to talk to people about this kind of weird stuff because it's interesting to me, and hear other people's perspectives. So hopefully somebody reach out and I can speak with somebody soon just to see what their opinions are.